The Awakening. The sleek vessel Horizon's Edge cut through the darkness of space, its reinforced hull gleaming under Jupiter's distant glow. Captain Vex stood on the bridge, his canine features set in concentration as he studied the tactical display. 4 generations of genetic enhancements had given his species keen eyesight, enhanced strength, and intelligence far beyond their wolf ancestors, but some things remained, like the instinctive twitch of his ears when something felt wrong. "Report," he growled, the word carrying a hint of the predatory rumble characteristic of the canine Terrans. "Unusual energy signatures from Europa, Captain," replied Lieutenant Sela, her feline ancestry evident in her graceful movements and sharp green eyes. "It doesn't match any known Terran or allied species technology." Vex's tail stiffened, a sign of both irritation and interest. Europa was supposed to be uninhabited, a frozen moon designated for future mining operations. The Terran Alliance had maintained exclusive control over the Sol system for over 3 centuries, ever since the Ascension event when the humans had vanished, leaving their uplifted creations to inherit their legacy. "Could it be scavengers?" asked Commander Revik, a bare Terran whose massive frame dominated the right side of the bridge. "Unlikely," Scylla responded. "The signature appears ancient, yet somehow advanced." Vex made his decision quickly. "Prepare a landing party. Full defensive protocols." His amber eyes narrowed. "Whatever's down there, I want to know about it before we report to Alliance Command." The shuttle descended through Europa's thin atmosphere, landing near a series of unusual formations that sensors indicated were artificial. The ice around them had been deliberately melted and reshaped, creating a network of caverns beneath the surface. "Life signs?" Vex asked, checking his pulse rifle. "Faint, but present," answered Sela, studying her scanner. "Approximately 200 entities, deep within the structure." The landing party progressed cautiously through the tunnels, which gradually gave way to constructed corridors. The architecture was unlike anything Vex had seen before, not Terran design, yet strangely familiar, as if remembered from a dream or ancient historical records. "Captain," whispered Revik, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "These markings, they're human." Vex froze, studying the symbols etched into the walls. Every Terran child learned about humans, the creators who had uplifted animals from old Earth, granting them intelligence, language, and technology. The beings who had vanished during the mysterious Ascension event, leaving their creations to fend for themselves among the stars. "Impossible," Vex muttered. "Humans have been extinct for centuries." A soft voice spoke from the shadows ahead. "Not extinct. Hidden." The landing party raised their weapons as a figure stepped into the light. Vex's breath caught in his throat. Standing before them was a human female, smaller than most Terrans, without fur or claws, but with an unmistakable presence that resonated with something deep in his genetic memory. "I am Dr. Lyra Veston," she said, her posture cautious but dignified. "Medical Director of Europa Haven. You're the first Terrans to find us in 300 years. The revelation shook the foundations of Terran society. Humans, the mythical creators, the beings whose legacy formed the foundation of the Terran Alliance, still existed. The news spread rapidly through secure channels, reaching the highest levels of Alliance command within hours. Aboard the Horizon's Edge, now in orbit around Europa, Vex faced a secure transmission from Grand Admiral Thorn, the leonine head of the Alliance fleet. "Captain, your discovery is problematic," the Admiral growled, his mane framing a severe expression. "The Council is divided. Some see these humans as a threat to Terran autonomy. Others view them as sacred relics to be preserved." "They're neither, Admiral," Vex replied firmly. "They're intelligent beings who've been hiding in fear for centuries. Dr. Veston has agreed to come aboard as a representative. I suggest we hear their story before making any decisions." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Proceed with caution, Captain. If word of this reaches the general population before we have a containment strategy, it could destabilize the entire alliance. Remember the third doctrine. The legacy of the creators must be honored, but never shall they rule again. Vex ended the transmission, troubled by the implications. The third doctrine had been established after the Ascension, when chaos threatened to tear apart the newly independent Terran species. It established a fundamental principle that while humans were to be respected as creators, they had relinquished their right to govern when they abandoned their creations. Dr. Lyra Veston sat across from him in the conference room, her eyes taking in every detail of the Terran vessel. Despite her small stature, she carried herself with quiet confidence. "Your ship is impressive," she said. "Though your propulsion system could be more efficient with a phase shift modification to the antimatter containment field." Vex blinked in surprise. "That's classified technology." A small smile touched her lips. "Captain, we've had 3 centuries to continue our research. Just because we've been hidden doesn't mean we've been idle." "Why hide at all?" "Historical records indicate mutual cooperation between humans and Terrans before the Ascension." Lyra's expression darkened. "History is written by those who remain. What your people call the Ascension event was actually the sundering, the deliberate separation engineered by certain factions who believed Terrans needed independence to reach their full potential. You're saying humans abandoned us, intentionally. Some did. Others, like my ancestors, disagreed with the plan. They believed coexistence was possible." She leaned forward. "We went into hiding because the pro-separation faction threatened to eliminate anyone who might interfere with the natural development of Terran civilization." The implications were staggering. The foundational event of Terran history, their creator's mysterious disappearance, had been deliberate. Not divine ascension to another plane of existence, as religious interpretation suggested, not extinction as secular historians theorized, but a calculated decision. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from Lieutenant Sela. "Captain, we've discovered something in the Europa facility, some kind of ancient technology. It's unlike anything we've seen before." The discovery was housed in the deepest chamber of the Europa Haven, a spherical device approximately 2 meters in diameter, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as one watched. "The Nexus," Dr. Veston explained as they stood before it. "The last great project before the sundering. A quantum information repository containing the sum of human knowledge and technological advancement." Commander Revik studied the device with suspicion. If this contains such valuable information, why hasn't it been used? "It requires both human and Terran genetic authentication to fully activate," Lyra explained. "It was designed that way deliberately, to ensure that it could only be accessed when our species reconciled." Vex's communicator chimed with an emergency alert. "Captain," came Lieutenant Sela's urgent voice, "Alliance Command has dispatched a containment fleet. They're ordering us to secure the human settlement and prepare it for protective relocation." "Quarantine," Lyra translated, her face paling. "They're going to isolate us again." Vex made his decision in an instant, one that would either end his career or change the course of history. "Sela, initiate Protocol Omega." "Commander Revik, prepare for emergency departure." He turned to Lyra. "Doctor, we need to activate the Nexus now. Whatever knowledge it contains might be the only leverage we have against what's coming." As they worked frantically to initialize the ancient device, Vex couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing at a crossroads of history. Terrans and humans, creators and creations, separated for centuries by secrets and fear, now forced together by circumstance. The Nexus began to glow, its pattern stabilizing as it recognized the genetic signatures of both species present. A holographic display materialized above it, showing star charts, technological schematics, and most alarmingly, images of vessels unlike any Vex had seen before. "What is this?" he asked, staring at the alien ships displayed in the hologram. Lyra's voice was grim. "The real reason for the sundering. 3 centuries ago, our long-range observers detected these vessels approaching from beyond the galactic rim. The Harbingers, we called them. Their estimated arrival time, approximately 300 years from detection. Which would be? Now, Captain, she said, meeting his gaze. The sundering wasn't just about Terran independence, it was a strategy. Humans went into hiding and separated from Terrans because we discovered that these entities specifically target civilizations with our particular technological signature. By dividing, we presented a less detectable profile. The implications crashed over Vex like a wave. The approaching Alliance containment fleet, the humans hidden on Europa. The ancient technology designed to be activated by both species together. All pieces of a puzzle that had been 3 centuries in the making. And somewhere out in the darkness, something was coming. The reckoning. The Alliance containment fleet arrived with overwhelming force. 7 dreadnoughts, each capable of reducing Europa's surface to molten slag. Their commander, Admiral Chorus, was a rhinoceros Terran known for his unwavering adherence to Alliance doctrine. Captain Vex, his gravelly voice filled the horizon's edge bridge. You are ordered to stand down and prepare for boarding. The human settlement is now under Alliance protection. Protection, Vex knew, that would mean permanent isolation and study, not extermination. Terrans weren't cruel, but effective imprisonment. He glanced at Dr. Lyra Veston, who stood calmly beside him on the bridge, a stark contrast to the massive Terran officers surrounding her. Admiral, Vex replied carefully, I respectfully request you review the data we're transmitting. The situation is more complex than Alliance Command understands. He nodded to Sela, who initiated the transmission, carefully edited information from the Nexus, revealing the approaching threat but obscuring the most sensitive details about human Terran history. Captain, Admiral Chorus growled after reviewing the data. If this information is accurate, it represents a Level 1 existential threat. But it doesn't change your orders. The human settlement must be secured. With respect, Admiral, the humans possess knowledge crucial to our survival. This threat was the reason for the Ascension event, what Dr. Veston calls the sundering. Humans didn't abandon us. They separated to protect us. There was a long pause before the Admiral responded. I'm coming aboard your vessel with a security detail. I want to hear this directly from the human. The meeting in the Horizon's Edge conference room crackled with tension. Admiral Chorus towered over Dr. Veston, his massive form dwarfing the human physician, yet she met his gaze without flinching. You claim this separation was for protection, Chorus said, his voice skeptical. Yet historical records show humans transferring all their technology and authority to Terrans before vanishing. Not all technology, Lyra corrected. The quantum fold drive, dimensional shielding, consciousness transfer, these were withheld. The Harbingers track civilizations by detecting these specific technological signatures. Convenient, growled one of Chorus's officers. So humans kept the most advanced technology for themselves. We kept it isolated, Lyra countered, and developed it in secret, ensuring the Harbingers couldn't detect it. The plan was always to reunite when the threat arrived, combining Terran military strength with human technological advancement. Admiral Chorus leaned forward. Your story lacks evidence. The Nexus contains all the evidence you need, but its complete activation requires. She hesitated. Requires what? Chorus demanded. The genetic signature of the 7 primes, representatives from each of the major Terran species. Vex finished, understanding dawning. That's why it partially activated with just me and Dr. Veston present, on one of the 7 lineages needed. The revelation changed the dynamic of the meeting. The 7 primes were central to Terran culture, the original uplifted animals who had become the progenitors of their respective species lines. If the Nexus required their genetic markers, it suggested a level of planning and cooperation between ancient humans and Terrans that contradicted the narrative of abandonment. We need representatives from each major Terran species, Lyra explained. Canine, feline, Ursan, avian, marine, reptilian, and pachyderm. Admiral Chorus, representing the pachyderm lineage, rumbled thoughtfully. Even if what you say is true, we can't simply undo 3 centuries of separation based on a single threat. We're not asking for unification, Vex interjected. Just cooperation against a common enemy. Something changed in the Admiral's expression, a subtle shift from suspicion to calculation. I'll need to consult with Alliance Command. There's no time, Lyra insisted. Our deep space observatories detected the Harbinger fleet crossing the Kuiper Belt 2 days ago. They'll reach Jupiter space within weeks. The silence that followed was broken by a sensor alert. Lieutenant Sella's voice was tense as she reported, "Captain, we're detecting anomalous signatures at the edge of the system. They matched the Harbinger profiles from the Nexus database." "They're early," Lyra whispered, fear evident in her voice for the first time. Admiral Chorus made his decision. "Captain Vex, coordinate with Dr. Veston. I'll provide the authorization for representatives of the 7 prime lineages." His eyes narrowed. "But this changes nothing about the fundamental relationship between humans and Terrans. We will face this threat, and then we will determine the appropriate status for the human settlement." The next 48 hours passed in a blur of activity. Representatives from each of the 7 prime lineages were assembled aboard the Horizon's Edge, and the Nexus was transported from Europa to the ship's secure research bay. Dr. Veston worked tirelessly with the Terran science team, preparing the ancient device for full activation. "The process requires synchronization," she explained to the assembled representatives. "Each of you must place your hand on a receptor node simultaneously." The activation ceremony was solemn, almost religious in its gravity. The 7 Terrans, representing the diverse evolutionary paths their species had taken since uplift, formed a circle around the Nexus, with Dr. Veston completing the pattern. As they placed their hands on the device, its surface patterns shifted from chaotic motion to organized, pulsing sequences. The holographic display that materialized encompassed the entire chamber, surrounding them with images, data, and simulations. It was overwhelming. The complete technological and historical record of human civilization, including the 3 centuries of hidden development since the Sundering. Admiral Chorus stared at the display with a mixture of awe and suspicion. "This changes everything," he murmured. "Some of these technologies violate fundamental laws of physics as we understand them." "Your understanding is incomplete," Lyra replied gently. "As was intended. The Sundering was never meant to be permanent, just long enough to allow Terran civilization to develop independently while humans prepared the technologies we would need when the Harbingers arrived." The tactical data about the Harbingers was most disturbing. They weren't a single species, but a collective of assimilated civilizations, bound together by a hive consciousness that sought technological advancement through absorption rather than innovation. They specifically targeted civilizations that had mastered quantum manipulation, dimensional engineering, and consciousness transfer, precisely the technologies humans had continued developing in secret. "Their vessels are nearly impervious to conventional weapons," Vex noted, studying the tactical simulations. "But these dimensional shield disruptors could give us an advantage." "We can modify the Alliance fleet with these designs," Admiral Chorus agreed, his initial skepticism giving way to pragmatic assessment. "But it will take time we don't have." "There's another option," Lyra said, accessing a different section of the Nexus data. "Sol Defense Network." The holographic display shifted to show a vast array of satellites and automated defense platforms, thousands of them, distributed throughout the solar system, but currently inactive. "Installed before the Sundering," she explained. "Powered down to avoid detection, but still functional. They're equipped with dimensional weapons designed specifically to counter Harbinger technology." "Why weren't we told about this?" demanded one of the Terran representatives, a serpentine admiral whose forked tongue flicked out in agitation. "Would you have believed us?" Lyra asked simply, "or would you have seen it as a human attempt to maintain control?" The question hung in the air, uncomfortable but honest. The third doctrine, the principle that humans should never rule Terrans again, had shaped 3 centuries of Terran development. The existence of a hidden human-controlled defense network would have been seen as a violation of that sacred trust. The network requires both human and Terran authorization to activate. Lyra continued, another safeguard to ensure cooperation. As they debated strategy, the Harbinger fleet accelerated toward the inner solar system. Long-range scans showed 27 vessels of varying sizes, their crystalline structures absorbing and refracting light in unsettling patterns. We need to make a decision, Vex urged. Either we trust the human data and activate this network, or we face the Harbingers with conventional weapons and hope for the best. Admiral Chorus stood silently for a long moment, his massive form tensed in thought. Finally, he turned to face Dr. Veston. The Alliance fleet will engage the Harbingers as a first line of defense. Activate your network as our second line. If we survive this, we will revisit 3 centuries of separation with new understanding. The battle began at the orbit of Mars. The Alliance fleet, hastily modified with technologies derived from the Nexus, engaged the Harbinger vessels in a desperate attempt to slow their advance. The tactics were effective initially, the dimensional disruptors penetrating the previously impervious Harbinger shields, but the enemy adapted quickly, changing their defensive configurations. Aboard the Horizon's Edge, now positioned near Earth, with the human representatives from Europa, Vex and Lyra monitored the battle. The fleet is taking heavy losses, Vex reported grimly. The Harbingers are adapting faster than our simulations predicted. It's time, Lyra said, her voice steady despite the strain visible on her face. Activate the Soul Defense Network. The activation was anticlimactic. A simple sequence of commands entered into the Nexus interface. But the result was anything but. Throughout the solar system, thousands of dormant platforms and satellites powered up simultaneously, their energy signatures forming a web that encompassed the entire system. The effect on the Harbinger fleet was immediate and devastating. Caught in a crossfire of dimensional weapons they couldn't adapt to quickly enough, the alien vessels began to fragment, their crystalline structures shattering under the assault. But the victory came at a cost. 3 Alliance dreadnoughts had been destroyed, with thousands of Terran lives lost. And as the last Harbinger vessel disintegrated, a new question arose. What would happen now between humans and Terrans? Admiral Chorus, his flagship damaged but intact, joined them aboard the Horizon's Edge for what would become known as the Reconciliation Council. The third doctrine has been the foundation of our society for 3 centuries, he began, addressing the assembled human and Terran representatives. But today's events have shown that some foundations can be built on incomplete understanding. Dr. Veston stood to address the council. We don't seek to rule or control. Humanity chose separation because we believed it was necessary for both our species to reach their potential. The time for separation is over, but that doesn't mean returning to the past. It means creating a new future, together. Captain Vex watched the proceedings with a sense of witnessing history in the making. The old narratives were crumbling, and new ones would take their place. Terrans would need to reconcile their identity as independent beings with the knowledge that their creators had never truly abandoned them. Humans would need to step from the shadows into a universe that had changed dramatically during their absence. As the council debated the terms of this new relationship, Vex found himself standing beside Lyra at a viewport, looking out at the blue-green sphere of Earth, the original home of both their species. What happens now? He asked. Lyra smiled, her eyes reflecting the light of their shared homeworld. Now we do what both our species have always done best. We adapt, we learn, and we move forward. Together. The Harbingers had been defeated, but the greater victory was the beginning of understanding between creators and created, a new chapter in the shared story of Earth's children.